Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Kyle's Top 5 Favorite Podcast. My name is Kyle Kohler, and this is Kyle's Top 5 Favorite Podcast. Before I get started, to one special listener, tell the guys I said hi for me. Today's podcast is a Tonality production. That's my production company. I'm doing a bunch of shit. I've had a crazy month. Sorry for the lack of podcast postings, but to be honest with you, I've just been incredibly busy. I know that's not an excuse, but it is what it is. I've just been soups biz. I had a great weekend at Coachella. I got to work Vistal Village at the Coachella Valley Music Festival. It was awesome. It was heaven on earth. It was one of the coolest events I've ever worked. I want to go back. Hopefully they'll have me back. It was super fun. Got to meet a lot of cool people. Ariel Pink, Crystal Castles, people like that. Also at work at the Bootleg, I got to meet Eric Andre, who is in my favorite TV show, Man Seeking Woman. So that was cool. Got to meet him on his 33rd birthday. So it's been a fun month. I'm excited. I've been working a whole hell of a lot, which is really good for me. Today I want to talk about Louis C.K.'s new show, Horace and Pete. I want to talk about what this show is, why it's so good, what makes it so good, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to dive pretty deep. I'm going to kind of come up with 5 things I like about it. I don't really have a top 5 list, but I'm just going to talk about what makes this show different and great. First of all, before we dive too much into the details, you should know what Horace and Pete is. If you want to know what it is, you have to know who Louis C.K. is. He's a comedian. He's one of my favorite comedians. I think he's kind of a modern-day prophet, modern-day philosopher. He's a man who really thinks outside the box and comes up with some really cool shit. He has an incredible story about his life as a stand-up and a director and a filmmaker. He had a show on HBO that was canceled and really hit the road hard, paying his bills, doing stand-up. Then he got his own show on FX, which was kind of a game changer. He did it on his own. FX would give him kind of a really small per episode budget, and they would not see the show until it aired, and giving him full and complete creative control, which is something that we had never seen on TV before. And now it's kind of become the new model with creative control and what people want to do with the creativity that they allow the people who are making the art that makes it onto television. Louis been nominated for a ton of Grammys, won a bunch of Emmys for the show, and it's kind of launched him into a new level of stardom, along with being, the top 1 or 2 comedians alive. In my opinion, he has reached the kind of Mount Rushmore status of all-time greatest comedians. He's definitely up there with Carlin and Richard Pryor. The way that he's done things is very unconventional, and he's a brilliant person. And he's also the definitive artist. He is an artist at the highest form, and this new project that he took on, Horace and Pete, kind of showed that he really is a man who understands the art of entertainment at a higher and more intellectual level than any of us can even begin to comprehend. Horace and Pete is a web series that he put out on his own website, louisck.net. He didn't promote it, didn't push it, didn't make billboards for it, didn't go out and do the late night talk show circuit for it. It just showed up one day. He sent out an email to his fan club, to the people who have downloaded his stand-ups and short films. He sent this email out one day saying, "Hey, I just made a new show." So I got that email, and I wasn't exactly sure what to think. And one day I'm listening to the Bennington show, and they were talking about Horace and Pete, and I remember seeing that in my email from Louis. "Hey, Horace and Pete, check it out." So I looked at it, and it was $5 for an episode, which is about what Louis charges for his stand-up specials and stuff like that. And Louis kind of broke ground doing that as well. He would, direct his own stand-up specials and then put them on his website for $5 or whatever and make all the money. And then he eventually would let Netflix have him or let HBO have him or whatever. He did the same kind of similar idea with this. Now, he had walked away from his show Louie to do this. He had signed a deal with FX allowing him to produce a couple TV shows. He currently, the most popular thing he's doing is Baskets with Zach Galifianakis and Louis Anderson and Martha Kelly, which is a genius show. And Louis produced, and I think he wrote the first episode and produced the show. And it's truly phenomenal. But he took that opportunity to start his own thing, which was Horace and Pete. He put together a group of actors that is unparalleled to anything I've seen on this caliber. To have Alan Alda, Steve Buscemi, Edie Falco, and Jessica Lange all under the same roof is phenomenal. To be honest with you, the internet has not seen something like that. It's just something that hits the internet with that much star power right out of the gate. And keep in mind, Louis is still the guy doing this. So you have a heavy hitter like Louis C.K., 4 all-star actors in Steve Buscemi, Alan Alda, Jessica Lange, and Edie Falco doing this thing. What is this thing that Louis is making? Well, it's a web series television show that he wrote, directed, and starred in. And Horace and Pete is based on a bar in Brooklyn, New York. And it completely encompasses the current American social commentary. Here it is. You have this kind of dive bar in Brooklyn, which is becoming a gentrified place. So you have a mixture of old people and hard-working blue-collar people who just want to have a drink in this old rundown bar that's now got hipsters coming into it, and it's just this interesting dynamic. So that's kind of the overall big thing. You have a cast of young comedians who Louis put in there. People like Kurt Metzger, Mark Norman, Nick DiPaolo, who came in and kind of played locals at the bar. And it just created this incredible dynamic. He also put together a wonderful cast of just everybody in the show. People like his daughter, who's played by A.D. Bryant. Greer Barnes is in there. Tom Noonan is in there. You get to see Laurie Metcalf completely puts on a performance that should win her an Emmy. There's a girl named Nina Arianda who is fantastic. And a lot of people, a girl named Karen Pittman, who you would recognize from the Louis show. And everybody's phenomenal in it. But with all this great acting and with all this in innovative way of releasing it, putting it on to his website and letting the customer give him money and we get to download it, the story was the best part, which is phenomenal to think about. That shows that the idea that he had, he knew stood up, and it really, really, really delivered. I've not seen writing like that. I haven't ever experienced something so well written in my entire life. What made the writing so good was how Louis took everything. He brought you into this family, a bar that was 100 years old. So 1916 is when this bar was established by the first generations, Horace and Pete. And now you're seeing Louis play Horace and Steve Buscemi play Pete, of the 4th generation of Horace and Pete's who have inherited this bar. They live in the bar. They run the bar, everything. And you kind of saw how much the world has changed, but yet stayed completely the same. That was what I took away from it, was how, especially when you watch the thing all the way through, how much the world has changed and yet stayed completely the same. Again, the social commentary of this show was phenomenal. You had guys at the bar bitching about Trump and bitching about Hillary, and it felt so like, yeah, I've been at that bar. I've totally heard these conversations and overheard them, but yet it took you to another level where you learned about the people who run these bars, and you realize that cancer and mental illness and abuse run deep into these types of families. And yet at the same time, the world is still doing the same kind of stuff that it's always done. People are still going to belly up to the bar. They're still going to order their whiskey. They're still going to order their beer. They're going to bitch about the president. And they're going to bitch about athletes and movie stars and shit like that. It's just people are going to read their newspapers and yell at each other about whatever. Louis did a great job of kind of painting what it is to be a modern day American, as he always does. He really thinks, I think, like a current man in America. You know, there's a great scene in there where they run a bar. So the bookkeeper is going, "Hey, I see that they only charged you for 1 case of whiskey, but you sold 2." And he goes, "Well, we've been watering it down." And Alan Alda, who plays Uncle Pete, goes, "Hey, we've been watering down your booze. Does anybody here care?" And all the customers go, "Nah, it's fine." And the bookkeeper's like, "You can't do that." And they go, "Well, we've been doing it for 100 years. There's a beautiful aspect of where we are as a country and where we are as a human race in that. And this show is full of examples like that, where, you know, it'll show that a rule is broken or that someone is not doing necessarily what is by the book, but yet it works. And that's what makes the world go round. It's a beautiful show, well shot, well written, well directed. I think it might be a game changer for what Louis has done. I think that what he has made could really disrupt, it could completely change network television. If you took some of these big people who have established careers on a network and they said, okay, you know who's a perfect example of this? Tina Fey. If Tina Fey said, "I'm going to make a show, I'll produce it, I'll direct it, I'll write it, and I'll just put it on tinafey.com," it would be the biggest thing in the world. And if everybody did that, if artists and distributors started seeing that happening, it could change the game forever. It's very similar to what Radiohead did with In Rainbows, where they said, "Hey, we're going to just put it out ourselves. No one can tell us whether they like it or not. It's up to us." Louis did that. He made this thing on his terms. That's what makes him a true artist, is that he said, "I'm going to do this my way. No one's going to stop me. I'm going to pay for it." He didn't take away 1 cent from anybody else. He said, "I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it my way." The episodes, he put them out once a week. He would shoot them, edit them, everything. Brilliant. And you could tell that people completely agreed looking at this cast. When you have Steve Buscemi, who is an American hero, a legend, one of the great American actors of all time, had no problem stepping in and saying, "Yeah, I'll play your brother. That's fine. I totally believe in what Louis is doing." To have Edie Falco, who's played 2 of television's most memorable female lead characters ever in Nurse Jackie and in The Sopranos, to have her step in and play this character with such depth. That was the other part of it, is, yeah, these are some of the biggest names in the world, and they're not doing this for charity. They're not doing this because it's a massive payday. They're doing this because they believe in the art, and you can tell in their performances that they gave a shit. They really did it. Alan Alda, who is in MASH and in the biggest television show of all time, is saying all sorts of offensive shit in this show, and you love the guy. He says every wrong word. The last thing that he talks about in the show is so gut-wrenching. Which leads me to my next point, and kind of another thing that I took away from the show is, yes, Louis C.K. is a comedian, and yes, Alan Alda is kind of a funny guy, and Steve Buscemi is hilarious in Adam Sandler movies, and Edie Falco was great on 30 Rock, but this was not a comedy. This is a very dark, heavy, gross show. It gave you a weird feeling. I remember when I finished watching it, I went, "Oh God, I don't know if I feel good about that at all," but it was fantastic. It was true art. It was, people would say a painter is an artist or a musician. No, Louis just said, "Let me show you what it is to be an artist." Now, granted, he's not some weird skinny dude or some, whacked out girl. He's just a big white dude with 2 kids who, likes to make people laugh and likes to make people think. And he made this show, and he just nailed it on the head. I'd have Jessica Lange. Jessica Lange was in the original King Kong. I mean, King Kong held her in his hand, and she's in there just being a dirty old slut, and she just is amazing in it. It hits every kind of social commentary, everything from transgender, Trump, mental illness, invasion of privacy, social media, whatever. And then it talks about, there is a scene with Laurie Metcalf. It's the third episode. That is fan-fucking-tastic. She puts on one of the greatest monologue performances I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if I would recommend this show to everybody. This is a short episode. I'm not gonna dwell too much. This is literally just my recommendation. But I don't know if I would recommend it to everybody. If you're kind of someone who you like Big Bang Theory, well, then you keep watching that shit and leave me alone. But if you're someone who can kind of think outside the box, can kind of see what art is, can see the beauty in something that might not necessarily come across as beautiful, I definitely recommend it to you. If you're someone who can support something that's independent, that's something on its own, definitely recommend it to you. If you want to see history change and Louis C.K. do things that are going to completely disrupt and change the way that we consume entertainment, then I couldn't recommend it to you more. Horace and Pete, it's available on louisck.net. I think he's selling them for $31 for the whole season now, but he put them out 1 week at a time, and I kind of took them in. I think I missed the first 2 weeks, caught up, and then just took them in 1 week at a time, and it was fucking amazing. Mark Norman, who is in it, and he's only in it for a couple episodes, is fantastic. He's kind of one of my favorite comedians. Same with Kurt Metzger, same with Nick DiPaolo, and then obviously the four juggernauts and Jessica Lange, Edie Falco, Alan Alda, and Steve Buscemi were phenomenal. This thing should get nominated for a shit ton of Emmys. The problem is I don't know who is going to win, which Louis show is going to win, Baskets or Horace and Pete. Thank you so much for listening. Go check out Horace and Pete. Absolutely wonderful. Talk to you.